what can we do as individuals, right? How is it that we can enforce positive change? How can we make positive change happen? And diverse and inclusion are two very difficult topics. So we have an array of experts here on stage, and I've asked the panel members to introduce themselves, not so much by name and title, but more as what do they represent when they walk in the door, and what is their subject matter expertise in this particular matter. So let's just get started and go down.
Thank you so much, Mike. Thank you so much for having me here today. I'll start a little bit with the expertise side of it and then get personal. My name is Elham Bolooki. I'm the Experiential Learning Manager and Senior Instructor at the Dubai College of Tourism, a vocational institute backed by Dubai Economy and Tourism. I teach hospitality to the new generation. Our college intakes an array of different individuals. We have local born talents as well as Emiratis and people of determination. Personally, my background, I worked under multiple luxury hotels under Jumeirah Group, as well as briefly in Dubai Mall and retail, and now at the college. Personally, I always feel like I carried a big responsibility, being both Emirati and female, to work in hotel operations. And in my current role, I encourage Emiratis, nationals, residents, and people of determination to find equal job opportunities within the industry.
Wow.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So thank you, Michael. I have the great good fortune of leading human resources at Jumeirah Group. And I guess what I stand for is learning. I believe that learning and the ability to learn and the ability to continuously learn is the single most important skill that we can all cultivate through our lifetimes. And, when we're talking about diversity and inclusion, it is only through learning that we can break down those barriers. It's only through learning that the unconscious, what I like to call unconscious, well-intentioned decision makers become conscious, well-intentioned decision makers. And in my 35 years in this industry, I have seen a lot of change. My focus has generally been on women in hospitality, simply because we have traditionally been underrepresented in the industry. Women, I'm well known for saying that we get caught in the pink ghetto. Human resources, marketing, accounting. And what I try to do is really push for female leaders in other parts of the business, mostly around P&L, because our general managers, our CEOs tend to come from line management roles where they have P&L responsibility, and we cannot have more senior leaders in hospitality until we fix where that journey takes them within the industry. And so I think, again, it's about focusing on where they start and continuous learning. That's what I'm passionate about.
Thank you so much, Ellen. Julia?
Hi, I'm Julia Miller. I work within the HR function for Hilton, Middle East, Africa and Turkey. I have over 25 years in international HR in the industry, and I'm a member of Hilton's Diversity, Equity, Inclusion Council for the region, and I lead the Women's Team Member Resource Group for Middle East, and that is around providing opportunities, career opportunities, professional development opportunities, and also advising the business. And what I feel most passionate about is providing an environment where every team member feels that they're welcome and feels that they belong, and highlighting role models so that our people can see themselves represented at all levels of the organization, and that our guests can see themselves represented by the people that are serving them as well.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. Hafsa, go ahead.
I'm just going to...
It should be working.
Hello? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so hi. Thank you for those wonderful introductions as well. My name is Hafsa Qadeer. I'm the CEO and founder of ImInclusive. ImInclusive is a social enterprise, a platform, a recruitment consultancy for hiring people of determination into all industries. And more our focus has increased on hospitality, understanding the kind of roles that are available. And like you rightly mentioned, the guests need to feel the staff can connect with them. I'm also a very, very proud sibling of a very talented person of determination, which is why I started this consultancy in the first place. I learned very, very early on that as 1 in 6 of us identify as people of determination, it's very, very important to include. And oftentimes, as we're growing up in different environments, we're usually taught how to exclude. That's just the honest fact, right? And so how do we unlearn exclusion? And how do we communicate that to our guests? And that's something that I started focusing on more and more. I worked at Special Olympics before this, and I have all of my life just followed my calling to make sure that I end up where I want to be. And today I'm happy that I get to do this every single day. Yeah.
Very good. Good for you. Assia.
Thank you, Michael. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Assia Riccio, and I'm the founder of 2 organizations here in the UAE. One is called Evolvin Women, and we help the private sector embed social responsibility in their HR practices by offering a development program to unemployed women from developing countries who come from very difficult backgrounds. And then I have another organization called NIA Trading, which is helping private sector really start and implement more gender-responsive procurement practices. Now, you were talking about passions. I don't think working in the social space and in diversity and inclusion was actually a passion. It was more of living, more of a lifestyle for me. I was very fortunate to be raised in a family where everything was around giving back. My mom herself was a victim of abuse when she was a child, and she dedicated all her life really to support young girls in developing countries, really going to school and jobs. I love the title, just to add one more thing, because we did start with one girl in 2017, and now we are in the process of impacting over 30,000 lives across Africa. We started with one girl. We started with $300 US, and I started after receiving 323 no's. So my first yes was after 323 no's, and I never look back now.
Wow, amazing. Well, I think that everybody is clear now that you're subject matter experts, and it's wonderful to see the different corners and different aspects you highlight within this question. The whole conference is about leading change. So the big question is, what is your advice? What is your mantra? What do you advise the participants of the conference and in general the hospitality to do in order to really lead that change in diversity, inclusion? May I start with you again?
Yes, of course. I want to just take a minute and reflect on several conversations I've been having recently. So one is with current hoteliers, where I often hear from them, now that they know I work with students, where they tell me, this new generation, they don't want to do what we did. And I often realize that they judge on the fact that they don't want to do exactly or start their career exactly as how we started it. And you have to look a certain way and act the part correctly. And I'm also guilty of that myself when I was working in the industry, and I thought the same. People were scared of me as a millennial, and now I'm scared of the next generation. So on the other hand, after the pandemic, I realized, well, the industry, nothing is really definite. The industry is not going to stay the same, and hearing the conversation before ours, it was clear that everyone's realizing as well that they don't have to do work exactly the way it was. So what I would like to advise, or what I would say is, when I hear people saying that we want to have work-life balance and we want to change the way we work in the industry, and there's all that will, right? You want to do those things. So my advice, or what I would say to industry leaders, decision makers, general managers, is create the work environment that you want for yourself, for your people, and your organization.
So we need to set the stage. We make sure that it becomes easy for people to show their individuality and to sort of be guided into that process.
Exactly. I find, having worked with, for example, people of determination, it's not only the physical disabilities, that the obvious ones that you could point out, but also it's a wide spectrum. You have autism, ADHD, ADD, dyslexia. So our industry is all about heart and connecting with people and creating experiences and working with your heart, but sometimes we forget to use ours. So I think I'm very happy and to be in an environment now where I could work with the industry as well as my students to bridge that gap and you know, tell them let's amplify this person's strengths, and you just take 5 extra minutes to push them into the direction that will help them succeed.
So it's interesting. People with determination have few filters.
Yes.
And it is that honesty that we need to find again in everybody and set that free, right?
Yes,
Very good.
exactly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Ellen.
Well, I know what it's like to have a young son who spent 2 weeks in hospitality before he was traumatized beyond beyond all recognition and is never going back. Which leads me to sort of say, to your point, Elham, we do need to think about our young people and how we introduce them to the industry. Traumatizing them is not the way to go. Saying, you know, this is what I did is not the way to go. It's just a different time. To answer your question, though, I think my mantra is twofold. I think that it starts with policy. I don't believe. You know, I have been the recipient of and the builder of many, many presentations over the years that appeal to my leadership team about diversity. In particular, as I mentioned earlier, women in leadership in hospitality. And I don't think the moral imperative works. Because if it did, we wouldn't be having these conversations today.
Correct.
And so I think that companies need to think about policy, and I'm not talking about quotas, but I am talking about goals, and I am talking about policies that reflect the environment that we're in today and protect organizations from making the wrong decisions about people. And the second thing I would say is, again, back to those big, lofty presentations, and here's what we're going to do, and, you know, as an organization, we're going to have this many of, you know, this, that, and the other. I believe that you are better off starting at the grassroots with one example, and then 2, and then 3, just like Assia, you know, she starts with one female leader, female young person who wants to come into the industry and be a leader, and you make that successful, and then you replicate that. So instead of going, you do need policy and you do need strategy, but I think if you try to boil the ocean in this regard, you will fail. And I have failed in that before, and so my focus now is concentrating on the individual success stories that can be replicated.
Yeah, so you're saying setting the stage is very important, but it takes rails to put programs on a track.
Correct.
And then it is one person at a time and unlocking that personal talent.
Right. And role models, you said it too, right? You can't look up to something that's not there. So
Correct.
In order to have younger people in the industry of whatever minority group, they have to have people that they identify with. And that's where you do need to pick people and say, we're going to make this successful, and then others will rise up.
Yeah, so what you're also saying, there needs to be a human component in there and an equality component. Otherwise, it doesn't live to the imagination.
And a policy component.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Thanks. Wonderful. Julia.
Well, in addition to equality, I think it's important to have equity, because not everyone starts from the same place. One of the things that everyone can do is have a look at the shortlists that they receive for vacancies, for example, and actively target underrepresented groups. And either that's, to give one example, one of our general managers hiring for a new hotel noticed that the candidates coming through from engineering were all male. And he tasked his chief engineer with coming back with female candidates. And lo and behold, the chief engineer came back with female candidates at that point because he'd spent some extra effort looking for them. So I think the main thing is making sure that we're actively targeting underrepresented groups, whether that's people of determination, whether it's from various ethnic backgrounds, whether it's gender-based, and making sure that we're finding those candidates actively. The other thing is creating a sense of community. So one of the things we focus on is team member resource groups. And this is a voluntary network that's created around the world. We have team member resource groups for abilities, for ethnic diversity, for gender, for generations. And these are not just for the people that identify as that group, but for their allies as well. We create a network, we provide advisory services to the business, we provide education sessions. I personally have learned so much from the abilities group. One of the things I learned last week was about the importance of live signing. And apparently it's because if you live sign and you learn that when you're actually learning to communicate, when you read subtitles, it's like reading in a second language. And I had never thought about that because I had never needed to think about it. So I think the more we can educate ourselves and the more we can hold ourselves accountable for making a difference, I think that's what's going to help move to a more diverse, equitable and inclusive environment.
Yeah, I think your first message is extremely powerful, is that if we fish in the same pond, the same fish will come up. Mm-hmm. So if we want to be diverse, we need to shift or enlarge the pond to make sure that what we fish up in percentages then starts to bring that diversity. Yeah. And I think we don't realize that enough.
And I think also the key thing is working with partners like Evolvin Women, for example, or ImInclusive, or Cedra we work with as well. And if we don't find those candidates ourselves, we work with the partners externally who are expert in those fields to bring those team members and provide opportunities for people within the business. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hafsa.
Thank you. I think I can add into everything that these wonderful women have shared today. Most times, the biggest challenge that we're facing in hotels, no matter what size they are, or the hospitality group in general, in becoming more inclusive of hiring people of determination, which is what I can share from my specific expertise, is that there is a hesitation of where do we start. And that's valid, that's okay. We all have our own fears, our individual fears, and we all have our individual biases. If we choose to say that, I don't judge anyone, or I don't have a bias, that's actually a lie, right? Because humans are made to function in a way where you have to take accountability to disrupt your biases every single day. So it doesn't matter where you start. It can be hiring one intern, starting with one person, like you said, including more people of determination from the local community to come and talk in the employee resource groups, like you mentioned. Or just having a conversation, with a university or an institution who's working so heavily on people of determination like yourself, but initiating the conversation and addressing that there is talent, and there's a huge, massive talent gap. It's so important because if we don't train and skill these people today, they're never going to gain those skills. We have one family from whom we hired where multiple people in the same family are people with visual impairment. And before we started taking that one person from their family and getting them employed at an internship in a hotel, the entire family's mindset was that we will never get a dignified job. Mm-hmm. And when I was sitting and observing that interview with this candidate, the candidate looked at the interviewer and said, "Do you have uniforms?" Because she was wearing an abaya, I thought she was going to say, I want to wear my abaya. And then the interviewer was like, "Yes, we do." And she's like, "Yes, I love uniforms. I've always wanted to wear a uniform." For some of us, the things that have come to us very easy, other people have heard those 300 plus no's. And we have to acknowledge that. That's a human right responsibility. If we want to make a business case of it, as I said, that's 15% of the world population that we're talking about. So why aren't we actively choosing to include them? From the minute you enter your own office building to looking at how your staff is interacting with the guests, if you think about if the guest was a person of determination with a hearing impairment, If it was a person who was deaf, it was a person who was with some kind of visual impairment, are our properties catering to that? Are we openly telling everybody that I am indeed inclusive? And it's not an overnight journey, right? It takes time, but start from wherever you can. That's my advice.
Hafsa, I think that you, in your direct family, my niece had Down syndrome, so it is a privilege if you're close because it takes the scare or the unknown away. And for a lot of us, we still need to find out first how that works. But if we see what the impact can be and put them in the workforce, maybe their productivity is different, but their impact is gigantic. And last year I stayed at the Sabil House and walked in, was received by a wonderful gentleman with Down syndrome. And I tell you, after a long day, to see that smile and that energy and to be touched by that, it's amazing and provides you energy. So thank you for that. Very, very, very powerful. So, yeah.
I think, as you were mentioned, I think there is a lot to do around unconscious bias. It's really difficult to deal with them. I mean, we work with black minorities, and we work with women who have been victim of abuse at some point in their lives. Now, the spectrum of abuse can go from was raised in a family victim of verbal abuse to gang rape, and in certain countries like Rwanda, we work with survivors of the genocide. So there are lots of different dynamics linked to the ladies we bring on the program. Now, historically, when we started, only 8% of the ladies we were placing here in the UAE were working in F&B front office, and the remaining was housekeeping. Why? Because there was an association between coming from Africa or not be educated at our level that you go and work in housekeeping. We're now in 2022, and I can say it is actually the other way around. Only 5% of the ladies we bring on the program actually work in housekeeping. Now, that was, it's an incredible story for us. I'm very proud to be here on stage with both representatives from Jumeirah and Hilton. We work with both of them. We have an incredible story from Hilton, where a lady from Ghana was totally literate, can write and read, and now she works in F&B. Now, why is a beautiful story? Because, of course, there was an engagement from the team. The team was actually teaching her to write and read, which I think it was just very inspirational to see. We have beautiful stories from ladies now working in DHL, in logistics. Again, very male-dominated environment. Muslim women from Rwanda working now in culinary, another very male-dominated environment. So I think it's all about, we have the unconscious bias out there. We need to either challenge this unconscious bias or educate the team. Whoever is in charge of recruitment, whoever is in charge of managing people, whether they are from, people of determination, illiterate, or any other minority group.
Assia, thank you, because I think that you mentioned unconscious bias, and I think that we are consciously trying to figure out what the bias is, but we don't realize our unconscious bias.
No, and
tell us more about that.
Yeah, do you know what is really interesting? Considering my background and the line of work I do, I spend most of my time in Africa. The last thing I thought, very, very embarrassing to say, but the last thing I thought was that I had a bias towards black people. So there is, I'm happy to share the link with you, there is an assessment you can do online offered by Harvard. And you can do this assessment online, you can get your team to do it, and you can find out lots of different bias towards minority groups or elderly people, people with disability. It is an incredible assessment, free to take. And the last thing I thought was that my result was a bias towards black minorities. And consider my background, so if I have that, and if I'm aware of that and I'm working on it, then I think there is a lot of work we need to do around the unconscious bias.
Yeah, I think that we sort of have a tendency to think that we are not allowed to be biased. I think that as human beings, we are biased. But being conscious about it and making it let's say, present in our thinking. We get a choice to do something different if we like to. And I think that that is the human element that we need to see. Not to scare away from being biased, because we all have a bias, but to be conscious enough and not leave it subconscious and do something with it if we want to. So thank you for bringing that. It's very, very powerful. Talking in theory is obviously important, but the practice is really where it happens. So I've asked the panelists to think of an example, the most important example, positive, negative, maybe both, to make come to life from their backgrounds and from their memory as to how it would play out in real life. So Elham, you're first. You're sitting close to me, so there it goes again. You're up.
No worries. The first thing I'd like to say is, fortunately, in the college, we've conceptualized and developed a program called Dubai Way. It's basically a platform where hotel professionals, also retailers, RTA drivers are able to get onto this platform. It's a video-based series of different lessons you can take to learn about Dubai, the history, the culture, and to be able to explain to a traveler in the Dubai way. That's where it came from. And so one of the programs that we developed is called Inclusive Service. And it gives you awareness about all the different types of difficulties a person of determination can have in order for you as a professional to be able to cater and comfort and support them when they enter your organization, your restaurant, your hotel lobby, and so on, your taxi and shop. So I think that's something that we have found great success in because first off, it's the awareness that you're able to understand that people of determination, like I said, could have physical, mental, emotional difficulties. It's not just what you see. So I think that's one thing that we do quite well. And another thing is I think that we can support the industry with is through our recruitment strategies. We offer so many flexible internship and job opportunities for the industry. So to allow the students to have experiential learning, but also to be in the industry. For example, we had a student whose vocabulary was very limited, born and raised in Dubai, very sweet kid, studied culinary, did 2 years of culinary arts. And in his final year, he studied for 2 days a week and spent the remainder of his time working in the industry. So now he's working for a restaurant that is recognized by the Michelin Guide. So we're very proud to see that actually our model is starting to work.
That's fantastic. So I think an example that I have is that we hired somebody with a stammer. He was stuttering so badly that he could not get words across, and was probably the most popular service provider in our, and providing that environment and indeed giving examples and trying to get the values out there so that others can grab onto it is very important.
I mean, in hotels, like a big part of what I did was, you'd stand at the reception and you see a guest coming towards you, you're not sure, are they happy, are they sad, what are they about to say? It was the most exciting part of the day. But, when you have a person of determination working in your hotel, it softens the guest. Yeah. It reminds them like, okay, I guess it's not the biggest thing that happened to me in the world. It's not the biggest problem. I think it really brings in a lot of the heart that we're trying to show.
Yeah, so it's almost a contradiction, right? It's a very big thing that we have to make very small again for it to become big, hopefully, again. Mm-hmm. Ellen, tell us your story.
Well, and I would just sort of adding on to that say that there's a lot of research out there that suggests that overcoming overcoming hardship leads to over-reported success levels. CEOs, very successful people who've had some sort of adversity that they've had to overcome. So, I'm often telling my children, your life is not hard enough. Mm-hmm. I had to work my way up from sort of, no real support the first time in the industry without any women around me, and I think that I ducked a lot of plates. Our chefs used to throw plates at me in the restaurant. So, that was I don't have a disability that is obvious, but certainly I was a minority. That's not what I wanted to say, though. I guess what I would say, if you ask, what are we doing? We are, really setting ourselves goals. We every year hire a lot of people during this time. Right now, just for the Dubai hotels, we're hiring about 1,000 employees globally. And we have set ourselves very specific goals around gender and around nationality. And every 2 weeks we report on that. We have to cast our net wider. When I hear managers say, oh, there aren't enough women applying for these jobs, well, you're not looking hard enough, because there are enough women in the world. We just have to find them. And the same goes for people of determination, the same goes for nationality, and the same goes for age. And one of the things I think that we have to be careful of in hospitality, and maybe I'm sensitive to it because I'm maybe the oldest person here, is ageism in hospitality. It is a young industry, and there's an enormous amount of benefit of having more senior people who are able to still contribute in a way in our lobbies, with our guests, that we have to try and tap into. So I guess in my case, it's about setting goals, measuring them, being very, just taking, not taking no for an answer.
Yeah, so we want to be diverse.
Yep.
We're going to make them inclusive.
Yep.
And we're looking across the spectrum. Okay. So we are just going to make sure that happens, and I don't take no for an answer. Okay. And we're going to establish it. And we, from a value proposition as a company, understand that maybe our measures on productivity or our strict measures that we're used to need to shift a little bit in order to facilitate.
Absolutely.
Is that right?
It takes all sorts to make a dish, right?
Very good. Thank you for including the older people. I appreciate that. Julia.
I look younger than I am. I think from an industry perspective, sometimes we are a little bit risk averse. So we want to hire people or to give people opportunities who fit the mold of what we have seen before. Or a particular skill set that we identify. I think the biggest thing that we can do is to challenge our own assumptions, whether that's unconscious bias or whether it's just asking ourselves why not, and give people opportunities to show what they can do. So for example, in one of our hotels, we have a bell attendant, not your typical profile for a bell attendant because he's missing the bottom half of one of his legs. And he's on crutches. So that's not your typical hire for a bell attendant position. You might expect them to have both legs and be able to walk around. But he does a fantastic job, and he was given the opportunity by a general manager who had a vision and wanted to provide that experience. In our hotel in Riyadh, we have 2 female Saudi engineers who are part of the leadership team in engineering, who are, again, not what we would necessarily think as your typical hotel engineering team, who are doing a fantastic job and adding value and acting as role models for other people joining the industry, Saudi females and females in engineering. So I think having role models who can show that your non-typical assignee does a fantastic job and adds huge amounts of value makes a real difference.
So what you're saying is that we need to push it, but it still needs acceptance from one person at the time to allow it to happen. So your general manager standing for it, or the examples in Saudi Arabia, it is still one at a time that needs to lead the way.
Give one person a chance and they do a fantastic job and they act as role models for others and examples that it is possible and it's actually a fantastic thing. Adds value to the business.
Phenomenal. Thank you. Hafsa?
I will definitely add into that, actually. So it requires a lot of buy-in from so many different stakeholders within the organization to start building more inclusive talent pipelines, right? And as a consultancy where I've come in and there's no contracts, actually, for disability inclusion-related hiring. So we've had to many times, sit and wait and say, we're going to take a stand here, and we're not going to sign a regular hiring contract because it just doesn't work for people of determination, right? So we have to understand and we have to give time to the fact that the industry is evolving. And it requires a lot of change makers to kind of join forces within the organization from the networks that you reach out to make a very, very significant change. And we're there today. So what we've done is, one of the things we have is like a LinkedIn platform for hiring people of determination. So it's called ImInclusive, and you can basically go and post a job, and you can put out filters that I'm willing to offer you a accessibility in terms of a wheelchair ramp. Or my team is trained on basic sign language. Some are very beginner accessibility options, some are very advanced, depends on where you are in your journey. But our team has studied what are the different roadblocks that come across the way, and we've removed them with one product, one service at a time, looking at understanding that there are people, like you mentioned, the general manager, there are people who are trying so hard to make the change within their organizations, but they require other people to buy in. Sometimes that's just going to take time, you know? And I guess it's all of our collective responsibility to find ways around it, through it, whatever we have to do, but that's the end goal to get to, yeah.
Very good. So you're saying individual humility for us, a larger ability of empathy to understand and see what we need to do to facilitate the process, and then again start one at a time. Fantastic.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Asia.
I'm going to be very fast. I know we're running out of time. I think starting from the top, you have to get a buy-in from the stakeholders. I mean, I'm talking based on what we do and the way we approach companies here. I mean, I have had meetings where the GM has told me, don't move, let me call HR, and we start right away, right? The meetings where nothing has happened, but the moment you have the general manager or that you have the CEO, then things happen very, very fast. And the other thing I want to mention before we finish, I think we work on inclusivity and diversity. We don't look at D&I, we look at the other way around. So for us, it's about creating an inclusive environment that then brings that diversity in the organization. It's not the other way around. And if you think about it, and if any of you go home today and talk to their HR teams and start to swap and change that paradigm around and start actually with creating an inclusive environment, then diversity comes as a result of it. But we try and push the agenda the other way around. And it's very difficult to sell diversity unless you have inclusion in your team. And yet we push it that way.
How important it is to, in the process, get educated, because often it's difficult to speak about it, it's often to make it public, it's often misunderstood. What is your experience there?
Show it. This is why we're very, we're very successful in what we do. Ladies are in the hotel, you see the impact. You talk to them, you see the change. You meet them on day one, you meet them after 3 months, and they're completely different women. The same with the trading company. We take our partners to Africa to see the farmers and touch the impact they're making. You have to show it. So
show and tell, and practical experience, and
absolutely.
Yeah.
Or can I jump in there?
Sure.
So I would say ask. We're afraid of asking people about differences.
Yes.
The average 5-year-old asks 145 questions a day. And the average adult asks 6. So, and you said people of determination, they will ask, they're very open.
No filter.
So we should take a lesson from our children and the people around us and not be afraid to ask, because it's the only way to educate ourselves.
Well, the conference is about leading change, and unfortunately, our session comes to an end, but I think you have been exemplary in leading change in this particular subject. Thank you so much for your contribution, for doing the work that you do, and I hope that everybody from the audience doesn't leave you alone as we come off stage to ask a lot of questions and continue the discussion, because it takes one at a time to make it a success. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.